This is the Work at Home Heroes podcast. Your host, Caitlin Pyle, digs deep with people from all over the world who make money from home. Get ready to wake up to a world of possibility for freedom, flexibility, and a life you'll love.
Well, hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Work at Home Heroes podcast. I am your host, Caitlin Pyle. I'm here today with Gina Gould. Now, after high school, Gina did everything she was supposed to. She went to college, she got a degree, and she found a job. But as time went on, she knew that the traditional 9-to-5 path just wasn't for her. Boy, does that sound familiar. So in 2016, Gina started a freelance writing business. She specialized in copywriting and content marketing and would do her writing in the evenings. And now she's getting ready to quit her day job and work from home full time. Gina, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Where are you joining us from today?
I am from Minnesota.
All right, I can totally hear it. And your voice, you said Minnesota.
I know.
I love it. I love it. Well, that's really cool. I'm down here in Florida at the moment, and I'm wondering if the weather up there is better than here. And I'm guessing it is. It's so humid down here. I just can't stand it. I'm so ready for the cooler weather. But last night I took a walk with the dog, and it was kind of breezy, and it didn't rain yesterday. And so I think it might be looking up for us here in a little bit.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's been a great summer here. So we don't always get that, but we've been lucky this year.
Yeah, and you need to because, come wintertime, you're all coming to Florida, I'm sure.
Exactly.
Well, very, very cool. I want to know a little bit more about your background. How did you get into doing what you're doing now?
Yeah, so right now I'm a freelance writer, and I've been doing this for about 2 years now. And I mostly do copywriting and content marketing for B2B companies, and I specialize in safety and manufacturing companies. That's what my prior work experience was in those fields. So it just kind of made sense for me to kind of continue that route with my writing. So I've written things like websites, blog posts, ebooks, basically any sales and marketing content that these businesses need. I even did some fun projects where I wrote some video scripts for a company that produces safety training videos. So it's been really exciting getting to do a lot of different things. So it's been a lot of fun. But yeah, basically I've been in the freelance writing world for about 2 years now.
Wow. So I'm totally digging that you are sticking with the niche in which you have experience. I think a lot of people think they've got to reinvent the wheel. Mm-hmm. And I look back at my own journey and I was never super passionate about proofreading. It was just something that came naturally to me. It was something that I had experience doing, and it just made sense that I just did that to make money while I needed to make money. I wasn't picky. I wasn't like, well, maybe I don't really like proofreading for court reporters, but so I'm just not going to do anything until I figure out what I want to do. And using kind of blooming where you're planted and using what you have is so, so valuable. And I love hearing about these different niches as well, because most people think about freelance writing. They think, oh, I want to write for a blogger. I want to write for this news outlet. I want to write for, and they don't really think about all the other industries and opportunities that are out there that are really niched down. And you could use an area of expertise there. So safety and manufacturing industry, you guys, there's money to be made everywhere. These guys need sales copy. These guys need content marketing on their websites. They market not from businesses to consumers. That most of us are consumers and we're hiring companies to do stuff for us, right? Well, business to business, they're hiring other companies to help them run their business. And so that's the difference between, us being a consumer and then working with businesses as your customers. So it's a whole different world. And I think you're the first guest that I've had on that's been working in this industry. And so I just get real excited when we get a brand new industry that I've never heard of on the podcast, because it just proves my point that there's opportunity everywhere. I mean, you've written websites, blog posts, ebooks, and you did the video scripts, and that produces the safety training videos. That's just amazing, because I know there's probably people at home that are like, I didn't even know that you could do that, right?
Right, exactly. And that was me too when I kind of first fell into it. I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a thing. People get paid to do this. I just totally stumbled across it. And I mean, when you think about it, it makes sense because like you said, all businesses need this material and someone's got to do it. So why not us?
Yeah. And I think back to the business that my family had growing up, and we never made the transition. I mean, I wasn't involved in the business. I was, 10, but we never made the transition to the online world when that became commonplace. And so family and business, it just continued to operate on this offline way. We kind of had a website, but it wasn't anywhere close to what it would need to be to keep up. And that's largely, I think, why the business failed. So I'm curious to know, you filled out in your application that both you and your husband worked in the mining industry. So talk about another industry I haven't thought about in years as being, something where you could build experience and things like that. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we were both working in the mining industry at the time, and we worked for separate companies, but mining is really big. So I live in northern Minnesota, and it's a really big industry up here. I really loved that job. It was probably one of the best jobs I've ever had, except for the fact that mining is a boom and bust business. So basically, when the economy is good, so are the jobs and so is the money. But when it's not, everyone's nervous about layoffs, and it is inevitable over time, just again, because the mining industry fluctuates. So that was really stressful for us because we were both vulnerable in that position. And so, the more we talked about it, the more we decided, okay, one of us should get out because the market was starting to go down and layoffs were happening all around us. And so basically what happened was I ended up getting another job outside of mining, which was good because the company that I was working for at the time actually went under just a few months later. So it was good timing for me to get out. But the unfortunate thing about that was the new job that I had landed, I wasn't happy there. I was constantly comparing it to the mining job, and it was a very different environment. And I struggled to, feel that sense of fulfillment and that enjoyment that I had had previously. So it was really kind of tough for me to get into this new job. And so I started to just realize that, the 9-to-5 path isn't for me. What else is out there? What else can I do? So I started researching ways to make money from home. And that's kind of when I stumbled into freelance writing, and I came across a website called AWAI. Some of you guys might be familiar with that, American Writers and Artists, Inc. And basically what they do is they help you understand how you can make a living working from home as a writer. And so I took some courses, kind of dove right into it, and slowly started my business from there.
Yeah, I think slow and steady is the way to go. In that case, you had a 9-to-5 job and you're wanting to make a transition. And last piece of advice I would ever give somebody is say, hey, if you want to work at home, just completely quit everything and pour everything you have into making money.
Yeah.
That's like a recipe for disaster, because just like taking shortcuts can bite you in the butt, trying to bite off more than you can chew can bite you in the butt as well. No pun intended. You're going to bite and you're going to get bitten kind of thing. And so I think what you did is ideal in that you just slowly started building things, and you're still at the full-time job now. And eventually you're getting close to wanting to quit. Is that correct?
Yes, I am. I'm definitely getting close, and which is really exciting because, like I said, I'm about 2 years into this. And so, I kind of at the start had set some goals for myself as far as, when I wanted to be able to quit my job and write full time. So it's really exciting to kind of see that whole transition and to see the progress that I've made and to get to this point. So basically what I did at the beginning, like you said, took it very slow, obviously kept my day job, kept that security, kept that income. And I would just work in the evenings on my writing, sometimes in the weekends too. But basically I followed what's called the chicken entrepreneur strategy. Essentially, it looks different for everyone. So at the very beginning, I would write down what I thought ready meant for me before I would be able to leave. And so now that I'm kind of at that point, I've been able to meet some of those goals and just really have a smart plan in place before I left.
Well, I think it's really encouraging that you said that you've been doing this for 2 years and that you still have your full-time job, even though you've been doing it for 2 years. I have seen a lot of people work at this for maybe like 3 weeks, 3 months, maybe. And they're like, well, haven't been able to quit my job yet. I guess it's not going to work. The whole thing's a scam. And they just go home, they just quit, or they give up, I should say, because there's a difference between quitting and giving up. People just give up way too early. They completely overestimate what is possible and realistic to do in a certain amount of time. And here you are, you're on the Work at Home Heroes podcast, 2 years into your work at home journey. And how much income are you generating from home at the moment?
So it fluctuates, but on average, anywhere between $3,000 and $5,000 per month. Sometimes it's less, but that's why it's a good idea to have a savings or some money stashed away, just in case the work isn't coming in, as steady, or you're not earning as much as you anticipated. But that's just kind of the world of freelance. It's good to have some savings built up and kind of a backup plan in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's super, super smart. And so just to be clear, I know that some people probably their jaws dropped when you said this. You're working full time and you're still making between $3,000 and $5,000 a month on the side. So that's on top of your full-time income. You guys, This is life-changing money. And if Gina is able to do this part-time, completely on top of a full-time job and still make $3 to $5 a month. What is possible for you if you got started? Where could you be in 2 years if you got started right now? Slow and steady. Slow and steady is safe. Everybody, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of times people will come to me and they're like, you know what? It's just too risky to work at home, Kaylin. It's just too risky. But it's not. There's nothing risky about using skills. That's the real job security are your skills. And so if you develop skills and you learn how to confidently market yourself, and you don't get confidence until you know what the heck you're doing. And so there's a lot of people that expect to feel confident before they ever get started. And so I'm wondering, Gina, did you feel completely confident in your ability to be a writer like on day one when you decided you want to do this?
Right. I wouldn't say necessarily that I was 100% confident. I was definitely determined to make it work. Just because with a lot of my research online, I kept reading things like, oh, a lot of people, will give up after 2 months, or a lot of people try it but don't succeed. And I was like, no, not me. I'm going to do it. So I kind of took it as like a challenge. And, that's not to say that it wasn't difficult, because certainly there parts of it was. But so is every new business. So you don't go into it, assuming you're going to have 100% success from day one. But you have to be willing to do the work. And with writing, the toughest part, of course, is finding clients. And that's where a lot of new writers struggle feeling confident, because, you have to go out there and pitch your services to these big companies. And a lot of people aren't necessarily comfortable with that from the start. And I certainly wasn't either. And, I didn't start making that kind of income right away. It definitely took time. But with, a little bit of hard work and persistence, it pays off in the end. And it took about 6 to 8 months in for me to start seeing consistent income. And then I was able to kind of strategically grow it from there. So it does take time. It does take work. But if you're willing to put that effort in, you're going to get such an amazing return on it. And so that's why, I've just been so excited about it, because maybe I wasn't 100% confident at first, but look at what I've, turned it into over time. And if I can do it, anybody can, because like I said, before I even got into this, I had no idea, that this was even something that people did for a living. And now I'm at that point where I'm able to make that transition and do this full time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you guys listening at home, Gina, me, like neither of us are special. We're just normal people who learned a skill. And yes, finding clients can often be the hardest part in starting your own business and writing your own income story, doing this work at home journey. But finding clients is a skill just like anything else. And so the more you do it, the more you practice, the better you get at it. And if you get better at something, you're going to be more confident in doing it. And so just because you might not be feeling confident in what you're doing right now doesn't mean that you're always going to be underconfident, right? The more you do something, the better you get. I mean, think about the first time you started to walk and the first time you tried to ride a bike, you were not very good at it, but you kept going, right? We had this mindset as a kid, like we were just determined that we were going to make this work. And it's the same with any other skill, including finding clients, including, learning these new skills and new concepts that come into being successful working at home. So Gina, what does your life look like now? How's your life improved since you added this extra income to your budget, to your family?
Yeah, so having the extra income has helped us in a lot of ways, one of which I was able to pay off a lot of my student loan debt ahead of time, which saved us a lot of money in interest, in the long run. So that was, really exciting. I was also able to take a 2-week vacation to Europe recently, which I paid for completely with my writing income. And these are just some of the things that I was doing on top of putting money aside, building up that savings to be able to safely make that transition. So, these are all good reasons why I decided to keep my day job as long as I did, because that extra salary, really helped me reach my goals faster. It helped me save more money, pay off debt, and it just helped me be more confident and comfortable in making that transition.
Yeah. And so what I'm hearing is sometimes you have to slow down to speed up. I think initially it's the same with like weight loss, for example, or you want to get healthy and you want to pay off debt. You think that you throw as much stuff and strategies and diets and workouts at it as possible that you're going to get there faster. And oftentimes what happens is you bite off more than you can chew and it leads to burnout. You try to do too much at once. You try to be perfect. You try to do all these things. And then you realize, whoa, this is not working. And you kind of scrap the whole thing because, working at home is not for me, or I don't have what it takes. And the reality is you totally do. You just try to do it all at once. And so if you take a step back, slow down, And then you just like snowball your progress, slowly add one client at a time. On my proofreading courses, I always say, I know that you think you're going to make more money if you get a ton of clients first, but all at once. But I mean, writing is the same thing. In any kind of work at home job, you might think the more clients you get, the more money you're going to make. And that is true. But especially if you're just starting out, you really, really face the danger of biting off more than you can chew and disappointing the client because you aren't able to give them the level of service that they need. So I always recommend like starting with 1, 2, maybe 3. 3 might even be pushing it, especially if you're kind of doing this part-time.
Yeah.
Do an amazing job for those clients, that one client or those 2 or 3 clients, do an amazing job, go above and beyond so you can earn their trust, earn their referrals. And then who knows, you might not even need to find more clients because they're going to be so impressed with what you have to offer that they're going to be like, hey, well, maybe you want to help me do this. And then they tell you about another problem they have. And you're like, well, I could help you with that. And then all of a sudden you've got this business that you didn't even know because you were willing to put in the time to invest in your client. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I'm wondering now, because a lot of what work at home heroes deal with, I know I certainly deal with it. I deal with it on a daily basis, even though I've achieved some measure of success, but unsolicited feedback, negativity, haters, stuff like that, people in our sphere of influence who are trying to drag us down or saying we're doing it all wrong or they would do it differently and just blah, 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 blah. Did you have to face any of that in your journey thus far? And if you did, how did you navigate and overcome that?
Yeah, so I was pretty lucky because, none of my friends or family had really heard of freelance writing. So at first they didn't really understand what I was doing, but they've always been open and supportive about it, especially since I started off just doing it on the side. Probably if I had just up and quit my job at the very beginning, they might have thought I was a little bit crazy. But now that they've seen my success, yeah, they've all been really supportive and they've all been excited for me to take this full time, continue being able to do the work that I love.
Awesome. And that's amazing. I think that a lot of times if we do get negative feedbacks, I know there's some people who are like, well, Gina didn't get any negative feedback. So, but I get tons of negative feedback. Every time I mention doing something different, my family's like, nope, that'll never work. And oftentimes the people that say, nope, it'll never work have never done it. And so they don't understand it. I definitely came up against that kind of negativity and doubt from people in my sphere of influence where, they just had no idea what blogging was. They had no idea what internet marketing or, writing books and creating online courses. They had no idea that world even existed. And so to them, they just thought that it was crazy. It's like, if you've never heard it existed, then how do you know it's real? And you kind of just are automatically skeptical because you have no experience in it. And so oftentimes what happens is when we have those negative voices in our lives, it's simply because the people in our lives, they love us, but they don't get it because they haven't done it themselves. And so if you've got somebody telling you that working at home will never work, but they've never worked at home, just kind of think about who's giving you the advice there. And so just keep that in mind. If you're at home listening to this right now and you're having those negative voices or, unsolicited feedback from people in your sphere of influence, it's just because they don't get it. What about your husband? I know you guys both work in the mining industry. What was it like when, I know that you did the chicken entrepreneur strategy, and were there any difficulties there? How did you guys make the transition together?
Yeah, so we definitely talked about, what that transition would look like and kind of laid it out on the table and said, okay, here are the things we need to have in place before we make this happen. One of our biggest concerns was having health insurance. So we've always been on the plan from my employer. And so we needed to make sure that we enrolled in his plan with his employer at the right time, the once a year open enrollment so that we wouldn't be without health insurance after I did quit and make the transition. So there was a lot of, discussion on, I guess, more of the technical side of things as far as like, how do we logistically make this work? But it's all just conversation that you have to have with your partner. And we laid it out for us, and we don't have any kids right now. So, I know everybody's story, everybody's situation is different, but you just have to really be willing to have that conversation with each other and kind of help each other navigate what your journey is going to look like.
Yeah. And I look at those difficult conversations sometimes with our spouses as like the same thing of, you're going to feel better when it's over, right? So it's like that workout that you've been dreading, or maybe you took some time off from your fitness routine, or you're just getting back on the wagon after an injury or whatever the reason is. And you dread it and you don't want to do it and you procrastinate. But when you do it, you're like, okay, that was really hard, but I feel so much better. And I just had a conversation earlier this week on those lines with, just a difficult topic, something that I was keeping bottled up inside. And I knew I needed to get it out because like the worst thing you could do is shake the soda bottle, when it's been sitting outside all day and you just don't want to do that. And so just getting those things out in the open are the things that are going to keep your relationship strong and improve your relationship. And so just open lines of communication. And honestly, if somebody reacts badly, it's again, because they just don't understand. And that doesn't mean that you can't do this, right? Just based on somebody else's opinion of what's possible for you doesn't mean they're dictating what is actually possible for you. So, and I know that a big concern that people have when they're wanting to make the transition to working at home is keeping that self-discipline. And so I like to ask our guests, how do you keep yourself on track all day when you have this full-time job and you have these goals to meet for your clients? How do you manage it all?
Yeah. So especially when I was doing writing as my side hustle, there are sacrifices that, I had to make. I had to give up going out with friends. I had to give up Netflix time at home and, all these.
Oh my God, not Netflix, not Netflix.
Right?
Never.
Exactly.
I'm currently working through Fraser.
Sacrifices. So, there are definitely things that, you're going to have to be willing to give up and changes you're going to have to make in your schedule to make it work. Like I said, I did some evenings and some weekends, but in the end, it all paid off. And definitely working from home requires a lot of self-discipline. So you have to be good at managing your time, staying focused, working independently. I guess I've always been a self-starter, so, that really hasn't been too difficult for me. But as anyone goes through this work from home or freelance journey, you kind of start to realize where your strengths and weaknesses are. So, for example, I find it helpful to get out of the house and do my focused work somewhere else, like in a coffee shop or in a library, just because I find that I'm more productive there. Whereas at home, there's, more distractions, cute little puppies that just want to play with me all day. So sometimes you have to, figure out where and when you're going to do your best work and make sure that you're adapting to that. So for bigger projects, I tend to get out of the house and go somewhere. But little tasks, like sending emails, bookkeeping, some of the marketing, some of the more simple writing tasks, I'm fine doing that from home. But it's just kind of understanding where your strengths and weaknesses are and making sure that you have that self-discipline.
Yeah. And you know what? I think the biggest mistake that people can sometimes make is assuming because maybe they're not immediately good at time management, like you've developed over the last several years of making this work for you, as I think they'll never be good at it. But the thing is, time management is a skill, just like finding clients, just like actually doing the writing, just like editing, just like proofreading, just like bookkeeping, all these things that we're maybe not good at initially doesn't mean we can't build those skills. They are just skills. So yes, we do have strengths and weaknesses. I am terrible at math and science, but when I have to do some kind of math, I can figure it out. It doesn't mean that I can never do math, that I can never manage my time. It's been an ongoing journey for me in terms of getting into a routine or some semblance of a routine that works for me. And it's just, we need to show some grace towards ourselves when we hit those bumps in the road and not think because we're terrible at managing our time or we're terrible at focusing. Like when I first started proofreading, I could barely crank out 100 pages a day, but over time I conditioned myself and I got better at it and I was able to read up to 800 pages a day. And so if I had gone with that mindset of, oh, well, I can't do more than X, then I would never have created the income in the business that I did. I struggle still with it, but a lot of new work at home heroes struggle with this fixed mindset that the way we are is the way we are. And if we're not working at home now, we're never going to work at home. If we're not good at managing our time now, we're never going to be good at it. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. It is a skill just like anything else. Nobody wakes up being a genius. Nobody wakes up being really good at the violin. Nobody's really good at walking when they're born. Like we all have to learn these things. And so I think that's really encouraging to see how far you've come. And I know that the listeners at home are, I'm sure, thinking the same thing, that, you started and you slowly build and you get better over time. We can't expect ourselves to be perfect at anything when we just get started. And of course, that confidence will come the more you practice. So what is next for you, Gina? Do you have measures in place I know that you're going to be quitting your job soon. Where do you see yourself maybe in the next 2 years? And you're 2 years in now, so maybe double the time you've been working at home. Where do you see yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So I am getting ready to make the transition to working from home full time. And I think that a lot of people, and again, everyone's journey is different. Everybody's story is different. But again, right now, I don't have kids at home. So I am willing to, be able to continue basically a full work week with my writing at home. Maybe that'll change one day once I do start having kids. I might, put in less hours per week. But by that time, I should be able to, scale and grow my business and, increase my rates and still be making just as much by working less hours. So that's really what I kind of want to focus on next, is putting in the same amount of time right now, making as much money as I can right now so that I can down the road in the next year or 2 years, once kids start coming along, I can scale down but still be making just as much. So that's kind of, I guess, my next challenge, or the next thing that I need to spend some time figuring out how to do, is really scaling my business, but while putting in less hours. But again, I have the time to do it now. So I'm perfectly happy with, putting in 20 to 30 plus hours per week still on my writing business, because when I was doing it, part-time, I would only put in, 10 to 15 hours a week. So now I'm able to, just continue that momentum and continue that growth.
Well, I think that's excellent, especially the part where you're kind of planning ahead. You guys eventually want to have kids, and so many people will think, oh, well, if I'm going to have kids, then I can't work. Kids are a reason to not be able to fulfill their dreams. Kids are a reason to put their lives on hold, and it's not. And I think that's so inspiring that you're planning ahead and trying to figure out how you can make this work and keep your income at the level it's at, and then continue increasing it, even though you can have it all and you're figuring it out. It's just, again, a skill. You have to plan it out. You have to think carefully. You have to be honest with yourself, and you have to take some risks. And you don't have to take big risks. You started small. You didn't quit your job. You didn't throw all your eggs into one basket. You're slowly snowballing this into something really big. And for many people at home, making $3,000 to $5,000 a month is all they want. It's more than what they want. So many people come to me and they're like, I just want to make $500 a month, and they're currently not making anything. And so the fact that you've been able to do this part-time and build it up to $3,000 to $5,000 is incredible. So final question is the one I want to ask. We are out of time, but I'm still going to ask this question. What advice would you give to somebody who's listening to this right now and they want to work at home, but even despite all this amazingly inspiring stuff on this episode, they're still scared to get started? What would you tell them?
I would tell them that there's never going to be a perfect time to get started. That's one of the reasons that a lot of people don't get started, is because they come up with all of these, different excuses for, oh, it's not the right time, or I don't have the time or the energy or the money or whatever to get started. But there's never going to be a perfect time. So you might as well start now. And you don't have to, dive in, head first. You can start slowly like I did and kind of growing as you go. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I think you just have to, be willing to take the necessary steps, put in the effort, work hard, make sacrifices, and you'll get to where you want to be. But don't put off your starting point, because you're always going to be nervous about it. You're always going to be fearful of the 100 different what ifs. What if I fail? What if it doesn't work? What if I don't succeed? But challenge yourself to overcome those fears and just get started. Put in the work, and you'll be surprised at the amount of success that you can achieve in a very little amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the time is going to pass anyway. And so if we're going to spend the time, we can either choose to spend the time being afraid to do the things that might not pan out the way we want them to, right?
Right.
Or we can spend the time doing the things and changing our actions, because it's when we change our actions is when we'll change what we get. If we always do the same things, we're always going to get the same things. And you said in offline, it might not always be easy, but it will always, always be worth it. And that's 100% true. Gina, I want to say thank you so much for joining us on the Work at Home Heroes podcast. We're going to tag you. We've already tagged you in the group Work at Home Heroes on Facebook. So any listeners can head on right over there and speak to Gina about this episode, ask her any questions. And then where can people reach you online if they want to reach out, maybe learn some more from you?
Yeah, so you guys can find me on my website, buildyourwritingbiz.com. I've got a lot of great free resources and tips for anyone who's just starting out. Anyone who's interested in learning more about writing, go ahead, hop over to the website, and you can check some of that out there.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Sounds good. Thank you for having me, Caitlin.
Well, thanks again for listening, everyone. I hope you got some value from this episode. There will be links in the show notes. As always, feel free to join our Work at Home Heroes Facebook community, where we discuss all the episodes in a dedicated thread. If you found this episode useful, or any of the past episodes, I'd love it if you would leave us a review. It will help us reach more people with our message and keep bringing you these success stories. Talk to you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the Work at Home Heroes podcast with Caitlin Pyle. Be sure to listen to previous episodes at caitlinpyle.co/podcast. While you're there, read the show notes and check out all the great links and resources mentioned in this episode and more. You can also subscribe to the Work at Home Heroes podcast so you'll automatically be notified when our next episode is available. Remember, as Caitlin says, mo skills means mo money.